This chapter placed emphasis on how the different types of music, together with dancing, have been around for ages, where both continue to evolve through the years. In our own way, music has been used to chant stories, together with ethnic musical instruments to celebrate ourselves, which is a cultural identity. In this chapter, an artist shines because of his soulful touch. A soul maker artist uses intelligence and creativity to create something good and worth celebrating, and stories that capture hearts. In this chapter, the Philippine textile is greatly highlighted, where every province is being showcased in terms of their world-renowned craftsmanship and intricate fabric patterns, with stories to tell and cultures to showcase, from textile techniques to design icons that have made our Filipino-ness distinctly creative. This chapter simply shows how rich the Philippines is in terms of design and craftsmanship through symbolic traditional structures around us, where every indigenous and religious group has their own take in artistry, which implies that art crosses barriers and differences as it adheres to the essence of creativity. This chapter highlighted that there's so much more than meets the eye, so much more that goes behind these presentations, one of which is the unique talent of putting out an improv or the ability to adapt and adjust in performing immediately during performances. This chapter also gave the limelight to those great.
In chapter 6, I learned what music is and its genre, as well as the purpose of performing it. From the 6 major periods of music, the traditional or the indigenous music, to OPM. Indeed, this topic is worth knowing. What is art? Who is an artist? This question has evolved globally, and numerous people associate art as systematic or rule-based work. However, art is simply defined as anything that has meaning. These textiles are not only a typical woven fabrics that is seen in the market and is used by several individuals in different ethnicity. It's not just simply targeting sales, but it depicts expression of passion as well as preservation of culture. The majority of the Filipinos know about these iconic identities. In this chapter, it's time to fuel our knowledge with undiscussed or unpopular cultural identities, tradition, art forms, and belief system of the Filipino. Improvisation is a form of art that should be applied to express promptness, immediacy, creativity, and innovation of thoughts to be delivered. It aims to achieve an on-the-spot or impromptu dialogue that would make the script enter reality.
Good day once again, everyone. In this chapter, I appreciate and discover more music genres from our very own country, Philippines. I can say music gives joy and excitement in my life. Songs or dance music gives a colorful history of every event. Yes, in chapter 7, me and my group was able to create a graphic organizer to sum up all our ideas in one presentation. I appreciate that this chapter shows the importance in presenting and making a story. Guidelines in other important ways in having a best story are here in this chapter. The chapter 8 focuses in different textile art and the art of weaving. Me and my group mates collaborates and research some designs to be presented in the class. Actually amazed of the most, especially the weaving designs from Mindanao. They are truly honored. In chapter 9, I learned the design elements. In other words, they serve as the design foundation. I honored the artist of my group because she was able to make a digital visual design from our different ideas. The Philippine woman who presented different tradition and cultures in our country. In chapter 10, nowadays, improvisation is utilized in film and television to build characters and stories as well as part of our final output. It's a wrap on this chapter. Your all efforts to make the last chapter meaningful and forgettable is highly appreciated. BJ 1A, congratulations with the team. Love.
Hello everyone, I am Regina Lice Ambranzuela, and here are my insights for chapter 6 to 10. In chapter 6, all men and women in the world are heavily reliant on music. So in the Philippines, this course discusses the origins of our music, which is the original Filipino music, or more commonly, the original Pinoy music. In chapter 7, we also talk about the soul creation. and at the same time, the seven Da Vincian principles, the Leonardo method. So his work ethic was based on seven ideas that he said were the secret to success. Chapter 8 was one of the oldest types of art in human civilization, used to protect the body from the harsh environment and severe weather. So, traditional weaving processes and naturalistic worldviews are used by tribal communities in the Philippines to weave their cloth. Chapter 9, it's worth noting that the majority of their arts and crafts are created and shipped all over the world. In the Philippines, they have many different sorts of art and continually discovering new things to produce. Bahay Kubo is one of the example of Philippine art that has become a hallmark in the country. In chapter 10, this is where most of the circumstances that he or she can ad-lib or improvise creative method and free to do it as long as it beautifies the plot and presents the point plainly. So,
music is a form of expression. It allows us to channel our complex feelings in a most creative way. We communicate with rhythm, and so we must feel the rhythm. Together with history in its timeline, music is part of it. We should be inspired to create difference and to spread creativity and uniqueness because we are a form of art. And if we are purely dedicated in what we want and what we do, then there's a great possibility that we will be successful. Considering our country and its finest beauty of nature and culture, we are really proud to explore and see what our countrymen is really capable of. We should support our local artists because we are helping our country to be known worldwide. Culture is significant as it is part or one of inspiration if we are making art. Art is tied to our culture and every individual soul. We should be more open and appreciate everything. Performing either mini plays or movies allows us to broaden our mind and to practice acting skills because if you want to try everything, you should be more open to discover the inner meaning of everything. Making the activity related to the chapter is really fun.
So ever since I was young, I was really connected to music because both my mom and my dad loved music so much and I was influenced by it. But I did not know any connections. Like I just love the rhythm, but I don't understand what it really means or what it really do connect with. So, with the chapter 6, which talks about music and its genres, I have established how connected they are into their own kind of being. So, ever since the pandemic started, I have created art because that is like my drifter from the scary pandemic that we have, and I have practiced them. But unfortunately, I can't do art on my own. Like, I only copy animations, like from Ghibli movies that I love, or maybe The Simpsons. And with this chapter, I have learned on how to connect my own self to an art piece, and that resembles me so much. So in chapter 8, it talks about woven materials, and I was enthusiastic by it because we just know that these are things that we can cover with ourselves, or maybe it shows the resemblance of the artistic ways of our co-Filipinos, but the resemblance of it is not just that. So, chapter 9 talks about how these artifacts that we have here in the Philippines is more important than what we actually see, like sari manok, or maybe the vinta, or the just a normal kalasa has a big resemblance to our country, and we should imply that within ourselves because they have been there ever since day one and they resemble our country so very well. And And lastly, for chapter 10, it talks about being prepared for impromptu speaking. And just like this, you should be prepared on what you should say or what you should do, because there are circumstances in where a shortcomings might come that you should do something so that you can cover things up. So it is very important to know how you should do that for you to protect not just for yourself but also to your whole crowd or maybe.
Music video making is such a challenging task to do. Nevertheless, all of the hard work is worth it. It may not be our forte, but the outcome is too good for a beginner, and that is something to be proud of. Art exists inside every individual, and the individual itself is an art. In a nutshell, every individual is a potential artist, and they are bound to make their life beautiful and successful. If clothes don't exist, we probably live with the embarrassment and get ourselves cold or sick. In chapter 8, I have learned that you don't appreciate clothes solely by just the appearance, but also by knowing their quality and purpose. In this chapter, I came to realize and appreciate the potential of the Philippines in art literature. The country Philippines has a lot of discoveries, and they are yet to discover new things to create. In order for a mini play or movie to be outstanding, the team should unite and communicate effectively. Thus, every person involved in the project should efficiently play their part.
Hi, this is Laspunya, and I am going to state my summaries in every chapter tackled in this subject. So, in chapter 6, when it comes to music, there is no gender in it. In this whole chapter 6, I've learned the importance of music, its different genre, and how is it used. I also learned some of the different classifications of tribal instruments here in the Philippines. In chapter 7, in art production, soul making matters, from crafting stories, transforming brief moments into images, understand culture, but also the invention principles, in which it could really help and guide you on how to do things with creativity and to understand how everything works. In chapter 8, in this chapter, I've got to learn that textile art is a broad term that can encompass many types of approaches. Weaving is one of the earliest techniques and one of Filipinos' tradition with the use of raw materials. Chapter 9 talks about the elements of designs. Elements of designs are tools and components that a person is using to create a composition. In the Philippines, its decorative method is consisting of traditional and the non-traditional method. Lastly, chapter 10, improvisation of the art. It highlights creativity. It also an activity that is not pre-planned, designed, or scripted. Improvisation nowadays are used in film and television, both to develop characters and script and occasionally as part of the product.
In chapter 6, I have learned about the various genres of music and its roots. And aside from that, I also have learned about the traditional indigenous music of our very own country, which is the Philippines, and have seen how creative Filipinos are in creating musical instruments. In chapter 7, I realized that every individual can be an artist. We are beings who have the ability to think and imagine and do something creative out of our thoughts. And aside from that, I have learned a lot from the Vincent principles in how to become successful in life. From what I have learned, Chapter 8 highlights the artistry of Filipinos when it comes to making textile art by using various techniques like crocheting, embroidery, knitting, and weaving. Chapter 9 taught me that the things we see, patterns, figures, designs, even colors, are visual elements that help identify a certain race or a nation. My highlight in chapter 10 that quite sparked my interest it has taught me a lot is about the theater or drama play, where I was amazed with the ample things that really had to be considered and prepped in order to achieve a beautiful performance.
In this chapter, I learned how music is important, how it started, and how it is connected to our daily scenes and scripts. I also realized how important music is to our indigenous families. And music can be heard and seen everywhere. It can be expressed, felt, and seen at all times. Chapter 7, it helps me realize that art is everywhere because everyone is an artist. The art will be known because of the good art makers. If you have already crafted your imaginations from your ideas, then you are an artist. That is the main thought of soul making. In chapter 8, the art of weaving is one of the types that I feel since I observed this in my mom. As a result, this chapter encourages us to embrace our own art, which should be shared and passed down to future generations. I just realized that every house in the Philippines has a different name, and every indigenous group in the Philippines has also different type of art. This chapter gives us a lesson to appreciate Philippine art, including Filipino artistry and craftsmanship. After learning everything, there is more to know about art. Chapter 10 will help us improve our skills in music, dance, theater, design, and even problem solving. Here, we can see the appropriate things we need to follow in order for us to have or to make successful piece of art.